great to be here. Let's get into it. 286 years is what we have, is what the UN estimates that we have to achieve gender equality. 6 years is what climate scientists estimate that we have until we reach a point of no return, until we reach a point where climate change becomes so irreversible that we run out of our carbon budget, that we are no longer on the path to keep our global temperature at 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is what the global community, the climate negotiation community, agreed is what we needed. But okay, I just gave you two very scary deadlines that we have, one for gender equality, one for the climate crisis. But what do they have to do with each other? Why am I speaking about this? Well, climate doesn't happen just on itself, right? Climate is impacting us, it's impacting people. And you know, you see the climate effects, it's happening everywhere, but when you think about small island states in comparison to maybe a rich European country, the impact will be different. It is different, it's happening already rather than having some longer deadline to happen, right? And the same is true with people. Here are just a couple of the intersections that you can see that are really important questions to ask when a climate disaster hits. What was their age? What is the age of the people affected? What is their race? What is their ethnicity? Do they have a disability or not? And what is their gender, right? So all of these issues are intersecting. They're intersecting aspects that build up the marginalization of those most affected, most disproportionately affected by the climate crisis. But let's focus in a little bit more on gender. Here are just some statistics so you can have an idea. 4 out of every 5 people that are displaced by climate, that become climate migrants, climate refugees, are women. Women and children are 14 times more likely to be killed by climate-fueled disasters. So you start to see some trends here, right? And why is that? Why are women more affected? Well, if you think about the patriarchy, if you think about gender inequality everywhere we go. I'm from Brazil, where gender inequality, gender-based violence is at an all-time high, just like it is in many Latin American countries, in many countries in the global south. And what it means is that when there's a climate disaster, this just becomes worse. There's lost opportunities for those that are most affected, including women. But that's the vulnerability aspect. That's the victim aspect that we see. But it's really important that we think about the decision-making spaces, right? What's happening in the global level, since we're now talking about this global aspect of climate, such as, for example, the climate negotiations. COP28 in Dubai, this just happened this past December. I was there. It was a massive conference, and here in this picture you see 133 global leaders of multiple countries in the world, and there's only 15 women. And so you start to see some trends here as well. Sure, you can argue this is an issue of voting, right? Of who becomes our prime ministers, our presidents. Sure, you can argue that. But when you think about the climate negotiations on itself, the situation is not that much different. In 2023, in this last climate conference at the United Nations, 34% of the composition of the COP delegations, of the national delegations for each country, were women, 34%. Okay, that's 1/3, it's not great, but you know, maybe it's advanced, right? Maybe this is different from how it was 10 years ago, perhaps. Except it was not. It was the exact same percentage 10 years ago. So despite the Sustainable Development Goals, the 2030 Agenda, the Gender Action Plan of the UN Climate Convention, things have kind of stayed the same. And this is not even the statistics for the heads of delegation, for how many women are heading these party delegations. That number has been between 10 and 20%. It has not gone beyond that, it has not changed. But why is this important? Why do we need more diversity, more women in these spaces? Well, it's simple. When women rise, CO2 levels fall. This is a fact. This is what we've seen. When we have women in parliament, women in Congress, we have better results. We have more environmentally friendly agreements in boards of companies as well. Diversity brings an aspect of inclusion. It brings an aspect of innovation. And it really brings the lived experiences of these people to the forefront of action. And so this is what we're talking about. We're hacking the climate crisis, but we need to move from this idea of an information society to a knowledge-based society. And how can we do that? How do we go beyond just giving people information and we go into the knowledge aspect of climate action? Well, let me tell you very quickly about my organization that I founded exactly 5 years ago in Brazil. We are a Latin American-based, youth-led organization called Empodera Clima, where we do exactly that. We believe that knowledge is empowerment, and so we compile content on gender and climate justice in 4 different languages. We create content that's easy to understand, easy to access for young people, to speak to young people, and then be able to get into these discussions. And we also do advocacy work, events, going into schools to really try to bridge that gap that's not being done by the decision makers, by the UN, by a lot of governments still nowadays. And so just in terms of a call to action into how do we move on from this, what can you do? How can you get involved? How can you help bridge the gender gap and bring gender responsive climate action? Well, finance, resources. That's truly all we need. The talent is there. The capacity of these amazing women, women-led movements, feminist organizations are already there, including youth organizations. But only 0.01% of all global finance actually supports projects that are addressing both climate and gender equality. That's alarming. That means if we don't have the resources, we can't even get to these COPs in a lot of these really faraway countries, right? If we don't have the finance, we can't really implement the projects, we can't get paid, we can't really build the climate action at the local, national, and global level that we have. And so my final message to you as you go throughout this conference is, remember that climate change is happening, it's a big issue. It is a man-made problem, as we've seen with the Industrial Revolution and so forth. But there are feminist solutions, so please keep that in mind, and please try to bring gender-responsive climate action in everything you do moving forward. Thank you. Obrigada.
Obrigado, Renata. Thank you very much.